We're going to talk now about a bit of New Zealand sporting history. Before Ruby Tui and Stacey Waka were household names, there were loads of incredible female rugby players, and they really laid the groundwork for where our national women's teams would go. And one name that was synonymous with that early success is Mere Baker. Mere was once the captain of the Aotearoa Māori Sevens team. She was with them through 5 victories at the Hong Kong Women's Sevens tournament. She was also in 2003 part of the Kiwi Ferns squad that took out the Rugby League World Cup, and over the years has continued to play a crucial role in the game, both here and abroad, since transitioning into coaching in 2012. And it's a pleasure to have Mere join us now from our studio in Christchurch to look back at her remarkable career. Kia ora, thanks for your time.
Oh, kia ora, kei te pia koe. Yeah, I guess it's an interesting history when you look at it, isn't it?
It sure is. I mean, rich and varied. I'm really excited to hear about some of this. I mean, take me back, first of all, to the beginning. Where did you grow up, and when did you sort of encounter rugby for the first time?
Yeah, so I whakapapa to Ngāti Porou Kahanunu, but I was brought up down in Murihuku, so right down the edge of the earth. I guess I was brought up on a farm, and I played backyard footy and hockey, and I actually spent a lot of time playing underage New Zealand hockey with my sisters and things like that. Yeah. But I didn't really get into rugby, like actually the game that's organised until I was about 16, 17. So I played a bit of school rugby and in the Canterbury under-18 school girls rugby team. So I was pretty lucky to be kind of picked up. It's, it's so different now.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's, because I mean, it feels almost like a clumsy question, but it's kind of necessary, right? Like, was rugby just perceived more as a boys' game at that period of time, and that was kind of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. To have a game organised was a miracle, would be the word.
Right.
But I think, I think the infancy of women's rugby has allowed it to keep that uniqueness of it as well. Yeah. So, if you look at the women's game, I was just reading something just before about Wayne Smith around how when he first got on the bus for the Black Ferns, he was surprised about how the music was going and people were braiding their hair, right, and they were kind of enjoying themselves, compared to the stoic of the All Blacks, in their zone with their headphones on. And I think what's happened in the women's game that's held throughout that, because it didn't turn professionally for a long time, and so it's got that uniqueness to it.
You must really have to, if you are into rugby at a younger age like that, I'm guessing you're looking around a little bit for role models or people to sort of model yourself on or to latch onto and follow. Who were the people for you when you were growing up?
Yeah, that's a hard one. So obviously, from a hockey point of view, Tina Balkaka, she was amazing. So it's one of the best, I think she's one of the best Māori sports person ever to live. She's such a good sports person, and she was so good at hockey and probably internationally known as well. But from a rugby point of view, I guess Debbie Chase was, when I watched her, I was about 16 watching her, and I went to a senior women's game. It was Christchurch versus University. And I watched this Māori lady, and she was just so good. She hit holes really hard. Her skill, her left to right pass was really good. Her awareness of the game, she could kick, she could chase, she could tackle, and she did all those things really well. And it's funny because then I ended up playing with her in the Sevens tournament. And she's the most relaxed player I've ever played with. She was just like, we'll just see how it goes. We'll just play to the width, and, something might happen, might not happen, but, we should be all right. You're sort of sitting there just going, wow. And then, so there's Debbie Chase from my point of view as a younger player, but as I got older, Anna Richards was someone that I thought really epitomised what Black Ferns were about. Yeah. She was dedicated. She'd been there for a long time, and such a good player. And the other one was Casey Robinson from Southland. Do we know these players? Probably not.
Well, But I mean, they have an influence perhaps that they wouldn't have expected at the time, which is kind of cool in and of itself.
Yeah, I think so. Anna Richards now is still giving back to the game.
Yeah.
And I wish we would do more in that space, especially someone like her. And this is my personal opinion on it. It's nobody else's.
Yeah.
But I just feel as though that we don't sort of recognise enough people like Anna Richards, who I think is phenomenal. It was a phenomenal player to play with. So bright in terms of what she was doing, very tactical. Very technical as well. No, I wouldn't say that she was from a talent point of view. I don't think she was the most talented player in the world. But those technical and tactical things, she could read a game like no other I've ever seen. You
talked before about the diversity of sports that you grew up playing. I'm curious, do you feel like that? Because, you kind of have two schools of thought in this area, like the Malcolm Gladwell thing of devote yourself to an activity and do... controlled practice, and that is the way to be expert at it. And then on the other side of things, there's I think his name's David Epstein view that you shouldn't actually specialise until your sort of late teens at the earliest. Do you feel like the diversity of sports that you tried contributed to your athleticism and rugby skill set later on?
Yeah, I think because I played touch at a high level, hockey at a very high level, softball, basketball, cricket, I kind of was one of those kids that loved sport. Academically, I struggled because I have dyslexia and a few other bits and pieces, but, that doesn't mean you can't get a degree. I've still got a degree. I just think that for me personally, and, I've had my own podcast where I've talked to Marg Foster and a few others, and we're probably on the same boat, is that, you've got to allow kids to be kids, and, there's play theory as well. So, using play theory is when they're, just playing out. You go over to Fiji and everyone's just got a water bottle and kicking it around and throwing the ball around. And they're probably the most talented players that you'll ever see. So I'm very much on the thought that, play is a huge important role. Technical that can come later. We don't need that in an environment where kids can enjoy it and they can be free to express themselves and really sort of give things a go. So I'm a big advocate of just giving things a go.
You got a big break in 2002. You were picked for the Aotearoa Māori Sevens team, and that was a time. I mean, we're going back 23 years now, but that was a time when Sevens was really under threat, eh?
Yeah, and it's funny because if you go back to a podcast Steve Chu did, he did it on In Between Two Beers, I think it was, and he talks about a decision he made about taking funding away from the women's game, and it put the women's game in general back nearly 10 to 15 years. And, I think about that time and the amount of sacrifices. Not only did the coach, Peter Joseph, put his house on the market so that we could actually, borrowed money basically from his house so that we could go to Hong Kong and participate in that event. And, those sacrifices, we did raffles, some people were in their own areas and up in Hawke's Bay were sharing sheep and, they were doing a lot to get going. It was $2,500 to go, I think it was back then. And, I when someone comes out and says, oh yeah, that decision, put us back 10 to 15 years, I'm the affected one. You're sitting there just going, dude, you don't even know how that trickle-down effect and what that did. It actually, it opened a door for Aotearoa Māori to play as Māori, which is fantastic, but it also closed a lot of doors and it really held women's rugby back for a long time. But on the flip side of that, this is where Aotearoa Māori, I think, in the present game is missing. I think there's been calls for the new, and Māori women's rugby team to be done, just like the Māori Rugby League. The All-Stars game is amazing. It's such a good sport. Imagine having an All-Star Māori women's and Australian game in rugby at the same time as a rugby league match. That would be amazing. I'd love to go watch that.
You mentioned Peter Joseph there. For people who aren't familiar with Peter, can you just tell us a bit about him and how important he is, both to your story and I suppose the wider story of women's sevens in New Zealand?
Yeah, I suppose he was probably the only one that stood up and said, okay, so NZRFU, you're not going to fund this, but we're going to fund a team to go to the Hong Kong Sevens. We're going to get a bunch of girls together who, we had to go to Rotorua and obviously trial for it. We went to a Māori tournament trial, and then we had a few different sort of camps. But he was the only person that put his hand up to say, yeah, I'll do all the back end, get the fundraising, I'll coach the team. It's like he was the CEO of his own sort of team as well. And no backing, no nothing. But he did get some backing from some Māori funds as well. So we ended up going over to Hong Kong. And Hong Kong's just around the corner as well, just to mention that. Yeah. And it's such an amazing tournament. It's such, I went last year and I was coaching a 10s team. And I just remember how amazing this tournament is, People are dressed up, they're having a good time. The vibe is there. The rugby is amazing. Even the 10s tournament is fantastic. And I just think that, wow, this is what sevens and 10s are all about. They're about coming together, everyone playing some really hard games and then just really enjoying the atmosphere about it.
It must have been amazing to see for the first time as well, and maybe sort of think to yourself, this is the future. This is what I'm getting myself involved in, and it's exciting.
Oh, yeah, I think you've got to understand back then in 2003, you think about where we all came from. So you think about Honey Hidemi from Patararu, Mary Baker from Riverton. We had some kids. We were kids. We were not, we were kids. We had a 17-year-old in our team that went on to play for New Zealand 15s. We had Lavinia Gould, who went on to play for New Zealand Rugby in 7s and 15s and Brisbane Broncos. So we had a lot of players that were from country towns, who were young. We were very young. And we go to a country like Hong Kong and there's people everywhere. Yeah. And the shock of it, I remember coming off the plane and the heat to start off with was so humid. And then there's just people, and I had a headache. My head was spinning because I'd never been anywhere. I'd never been out of the country before.
Right.
So man, you go to Hong Kong.
And I mean, I guess that one of the important things about this is that not only did you hold your own on the field, but you crushed it, right? You guys won that. You won that tournament.
Yeah, we won it quite a few times, and the US at the time were really competitive in the seven space. They still are now. Look, they won a bronze medal at the Olympics, so they've always been a really competitive team. And even when I was going through mine, they were competitive as well. And they've got the same similar story as what we have. We had to self-fund it. We didn't have the resources, all those sorts of things as well. But they were really, they were a hard competitor. They're hard. They're very hearty, the Americans, and very strong and things like that. So we played them in a final one year. We played a team called the Australian Rats, which had, funny you should mention this, Anna Richards in it, and also Midia Rule, Marsh, who was two Black Ferns who played for the Australian team.
Gee, look at that. Interesting. You mentioned that they... this tournament kicked off an astonishing run for the Aotearoa Māori Sevens squad. I think you won the next 5 Hong Kong Sevens, 14 of the 18 official tournaments between 2000 and 2012. But the team wasn't invited in 2008 and 2009. Why was that?
Yeah, I think what had happened is that the New Zealand RFU had started to really form their own sevens, and so... Oh, look, if you win it each year, you're not going to keep on inviting this winner back, are you? That's a long running stance there as well. And I just think that the times were changing. New Zealand Olympic sport was starting to fund some money through the NZRFU. So they were thinking, I'm only guessing here, because back then it was an IRB stop for the men's, but not for the women's. Right. And so I think... I can't actually remember what the actual why we're not coming back, but I think it was because that the women were going to go. But, they weren't the official women's IRB or HSBC didn't happen for I think 2023 was their first year, or 2022. And Ruby was a commentator on that because she wasn't playing then. And she was just like, oh man, I wish I was playing.
Yeah. Now, I mean, amidst all of this, you won the Rugby League World Cup with the Kiwi Ferns. That was in 2003. You represented Canterbury throughout in Sevens and Taj. If you don't mind my asking, I mean, there's a lot on your plate there. How could you afford to do all of this? Yeah,
good point. So I was at university for most of it.
Right.
And also I worked a 30-hour job in a bar.
Wow.
And then, I had a full plate.
Yeah.
And, I look back on it, and for about 5 to 6 years, I was doing this rotating shift of rugby league, rugby, touch, sevens. And I did it for 5 to 6 years. And I got to a point where, one, I couldn't afford it anymore. And two, I actually was getting a little bit burnt out. And so, I had to start choosing and start really going, well, if it's rugby, let's go down the rugby route. If it's rugby league, let's just go down the rugby league route. And, and so ended up not playing a lot of some other stuff that I really enjoyed. And it's just, I think that's just the evolution of sport. At some point, you have to make a decision on which way you're going to go. Just to you can't do everything. And, but, that takes, I think I was in my 27 by then to make that decision. And I was quite happy to do one.
You transition into coaching in 2012, which I presume was kind of a natural thing to do. But it probably would have been pretty easy to put some roots down in New Zealand and decide that you're really going to, kickstart some stuff here. But you decided to coach all around the world.
Yeah, at that time in 2012, which was a long time ago as well. Look, we're starting off 20 years later. Now we're starting off 12, I guess. But, I wanted to make coaching my career, and I wanted to make it like, I would be getting up and going to work. So I wanted to make it my job. So the only way I could do that, because New Zealand, they weren't paying anything. They weren't paying anybody. And they didn't have enough here for you to be able to do it, if that makes sense. Right. There might have been a little bit of work here and a resource worker, and you could have been in the Canterbury women's team, which is a voluntary job. But I wanted to make it my
There's no professional
income.
Structure compared to other countries, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so I got a phone call. I was over in Australia actually working as a regional manager for something, Aldi food stores, that's right. And I got a phone call saying, hey, have you ever thought about coaching? And I said, well, they don't pay you, and I've got bills, like I've got a mortgage. Yeah. And so they were just like, no, we're going to pay you. This is how much it is. It's not a huge amount. I was just like, well, actually, that's a student wage, but okay, cool. We're going to pay you. You're going to come over. You're going to be our director of rugby. You're going to create the women's legacy here, and you're going to be player coach kind of type of thing. And then you're going to work on our youth development. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. Yeah, okay, cool. Righto, sweet. And I didn't really ask any other questions. And, I just really wanted to coach, and I just wanted to really be part of rugby and still carry on this amazing affair that I have, I would call it, with rugby. Because it's just, that's my community, that's the people I hang out with, that's, rugby people. I think rugby people are different compared to other sports people. And
In what way?
They just are. I just think they're a little bit more crazier.
And so where's this? This is in Ireland, yeah?
This is in Ireland. So I went over to Ireland, turned up, and there was 30 to 40 people there. Uh-huh. And about half of them had never picked up a ball.
Right.
So I had to learn very quickly how to coach different skill levels. And that's one of the things that if you ever talk to a female coach who's actually worked in all different areas, the community space, the high performance space, they'll always say the same thing, that the women's game have vast variety of skill sets. And so you have to become a really good, skillful coach. You have to break skills down, like catch pass, which foot you need to do it on, or, things like that, kicking and all that. And you have to actually coach those skills.
Did you find that
good at them?
Sorry, did you find that frustrating in the beginning, particularly coming? You're still a skilled and experienced rugby player at that stage. Well, as you are now, of course, but you know what I mean, off the back of your playing career.
Yeah, it obviously. So we ended up having two teams, and I ended up coaching both teams as well, plus playing. So you're looking at developing and this is another thing as well when you're coaching. You might have to, and I've done this before as well. You have two teams, and they're different skill levels, different abilities. So you have to play two different styles. Mm. And so not only are you coaching different skill levels, but now you're coaching different styles. So it's very, I don't know, you've just got to be very flexible.
It's, would it be fair to say you were known as a bit of a hard taskmaster as a coach? Yeah.
In my early days, I was very much, I was like, we don't have time for that. I still am to an extent, but I'm a bit more chilled about stuff, and I don't take things. I just remember when I was a younger coach, I just really wanted to win, no matter what. And that drove me a lot more. But as I became an older coach, I realised that you're going to win and lose games. It's just the way it is. It's that's how the penny drops. But if your preparation is really good and you're hitting those milestones, it doesn't matter. It's actually not that big of a deal. The outcome.
Well, How do you feel about that now? Because I know that there's been a bit of a shift in mentality in coaching, especially among youth grades, right? Away necessarily from like championships and results, and towards more of a sort of player development focus. That results are less important so long as you are developing good players, perhaps with like an identifiable style. Where do you land on that kind of spectrum?
Yeah, I land on developing the individual, not only to be a good player and what they're doing, but a good human. And I think that's kind of my philosophy now, whereas before I was just like, I just want to win. And whereas as you go through the coaching stages and your development and things like that, you really do change your coaching philosophy by the teams that you've coached. And I've coached so many different teams in terms of, I've coached in the States, I've coached an Italian team, I've coached in Ireland, I've coached an Estonian men's team, I've coached up in the European corridor, and, in Japan as well. And they all have and obviously the States, but they all have their unique flavours and their cultures are so different. And you have to really adapt to those cultures and their unique flavours to actually be able to coach them.
What was it like coaching that Estonian men's team?
Oh, great. They were awesome.
Yeah.
They were cool. They might not have had the skill level as what you would expect New Zealand squads, but man, they had a good big heart and they just ran, and I made them run so much. And they just, anything that I put in front of them, a challenge, they went for it. And, that's pretty cool. And, some teams you've had to really, you want to put some challenges there, but you can't because they don't have the ability or the capability to do it. Mm. So you've had to really sort of dial it down a little bit. But these guys, I put a challenge in front of them and they just went for it. It's awesome.
Outside of New Zealand, where that you've coached had like the best level of sort of natural talent that you saw? Because you must kind of see that people who, as you said before, haven't actually picked up a ball, but maybe just kind of take to it. It's like they're born to do it. That must be quite a cool feeling as a coach.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say it's quite hard because New Zealand, I think, is probably the only country maybe Fiji.
Right.
In terms of, I think with Fiji, they're just out of this world. But when it comes to you can have some real skillful players, but then they don't manage a game very well. Mm. So I think New Zealand has all of it, tactical, technical, and are really good at that space. And then they've just got some talent to burn, like, Stacey Wakas and Ruby Tui's and all those sorts of things. But individually, I think there's one player there's two players in Ireland that I coach who, Stacey Flood and Eve Higgins. Mm. And one of them was 13 when I had her, and she just walked down down the road, just walked up and said, "Hey, I want to be a rugby player. I'm gonna basically play for Ireland." And I was just like looking at her, going, "Wow, that's pretty cool. That's a lofty goal." Cool. I was like, great. And so I had her for a couple of years, and and now she's one of the best players in Ireland. And same with Stacey Flood. I picked her. I did a lot of development in schools when I was over there, and this school was it was St. Louis girls' school. Wouldn't been the most athletic school to go to in Ireland. But, every time she just ran and everything like that. And again, she's been in that team since she was 16. She's about 27 now. I caught up with her when I was in Dublin over the Christmas break. And she's just like, it's still the same character that you love. But you're just sort of just sitting there going, wow, you've done so much in that 10 years that you've been in that squad. What else are you going to do? And she's like, maybe come play rugby league.
We have about 3 minutes left. Let me ask you this: when you look at where women's rugby is at now, do you ever? I'm sure that you feel a sense of pride and excitement. Do you ever feel a sense of envy?
Not really.
No.
I don't feel envious. I think that NZRFU, and this is probably going to be controversial, so it's fine. I think they can do more.
Yeah.
And I still think they're missing a boat, and that's just my opinion. Because as we go into the professional area of women's sport in general, this is in the world and whatever, I don't think they realise that there's a huge market here, and I don't think they've cottoned on what the New Zealand with rugby league, what they're doing, and how explosive that's going to be, and how many players they are going to lose. And that's just my opinion on it.
Right.
Yeah, I know that other people have got their opinions on it, but I just don't think we've set up enough professional space here for players to stay.
And you reckon rugby league might just come in and sort of, well, with money, I suppose, right? Like is that the fear?
Yeah. Money, resources.
Yeah, right.
Some of those contracts also are very good contracts in terms of the longevity of them.
Yeah.
So, 3-year contracts. Whereas here we're going year by year.
Gee, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that before, but I suppose, it's a business really, isn't it? You have to start thinking about it as a business at a certain point in time.
Yeah, and some of the resources over there, the Broncos setup is like out of this world. It's so great. You'd think about our high performance setup in the Sevens in Whakatane or the Mount it's like a third of it. It's the Broncos is like huge. It's huge. It's flash. It's got everything. So, sometimes, and we've got some pretty talented girls here who can play rugby and rugby league.
You're high performance manager at Rugby Southland, yeah?
I was, yeah, very long time ago.
Who are the? Sorry, I just seen that we've got about a minute left. But in terms of looking at the future of women's rugby in New Zealand, who are some of the names or areas that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I think there's some great athletes coming out of the Wellington region in that youth space. I commentated on I commentated on the top four and also the women's top four as well. And there's some great teams up there, Fielding High as well. Manakura is one of the best teams in the country. And some of those girls have already been picked up for league contracts.
Right. There you go. We come back to it. So you got to be quick to get in there.
You got to offer something.
Indeed. Mary Baker, really nice chatting to you. That was really interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Appreciate your time.
No worries. Have a good day.
That is Mary Baker there. Sevens Rugby League coaching legend here in Aotearoa.